morning. To be a human being is to be a story. And books reveal themselves one page at a time. But our lives are revealed through days and minutes and moments and years. And while we can control the speed at which we turn the pages of a book, the chapters of our lives often come quickly and unexpectedly before we're ready. The last few years of my life have been a set of experiences I never thought I would have. I'd been a teacher librarian in the United States for over 20 years and thought that's where I would end my career. But another story was unfolding, bit by bit, that would change everything about the life I thought I would have. You see, something unexpected happened, a plot twist, if you will. And I'm going to tell you my story. Before I packed my bags and flew 9,000 miles away from everyone and everything I ever knew, I found myself sitting in the audience of a keynote address at an educational technology conference. And the speaker was talking about how she had achieved success in spite of some major life upheavals, and that while she was earning recognition and respect for her work, her personal life was falling apart. And the message was about empowerment and resilience through life's challenges. And it resonated with me, and I took it to heart, without having any idea that within the year, I would be on a plane, alone, flying to Singapore for my first international school position. I was offered a one-year interim contract at the United World College here in Singapore, and I was so new to international teaching, I had no idea that that was not the norm. And that year, I worked with our boarding house students that gave them an opportunity to tell their origin and cultural stories to a group of students in a rural school in Georgia. And the kids in Georgia had never heard those stories before, nor had they heard the language in which they were originally told. And the girls felt honored and seen and respected to be able to share their stories. That year, I was also invited to join the Red Dot Readers' Cup Committee, and we revived a long-dormant program that was hugely successful that year. I went to Australia to ride horses in the bush with 24 high school girls, and then later went to Kenya to help build an outdoor classroom at the Daraja Academy, which is a school that gives an IB education to the best and the brightest young women in that country. Now, the weight of my decision to be so far away from friends and family that year felt heavy. And these experiences provided a counterbalance, but they never really erased the reality that I was alone. I thought I was going home at the end of that year, but a friend facilitated a connection with a startup school in Bangkok, and I was offered the position of the librarian as inaugural staff. That was risky for me too, new to international systems, to go to a startup school, but I took the risk. And that library was beautiful and colorful and well-designed, and it was filled with books that had been bought in bulk from a used bookseller, and about 80% of it was completely inappropriate for a junior library. When I walked in there and saw that, my heart almost stopped. It was 2 weeks before the start of school, and I had no computer, no technology, no teaching space, no assistant. I had no idea how I was going to make that happen, but I did make it happen. And on the first day of school, every child that came to the library went home with a book. Now, one thing the library did have was a slide. And it had a steep drop from the second floor, and the kids would shoot out of the bottom of it on the first floor. And I found out later that one of the reasons that led me to be offered the position is that I was one of the few applicants that didn't run screaming in the other direction when they heard about a slide in the library. Now, being at a startup school allowed me to be highly creative right from the start. I designed the directional signs and the stairway spines, and worked with our marketing department to help put those ideas into print. And that collaboration led the library to be in the public eye through a very active social media account, which led to the success of a drive-through library program that I developed that put physical books in the hands of students who were isolated because of the COVID closings. When I look at the pictures of my time there, I can see the joy, not only in myself, but in the space, and how I integrated it there. Now, during the second year I was at Wellington, I got an unexpected phone call from a former colleague at United World College asking if I was interested in a rare opening at a well-established school in Tokyo. I have a deep connection to Japan and jumped at the chance. Moving to a country with closed borders in the midst of a global pandemic is a story that would take me beyond my allotted time, and it was almost an international incident. But I made it happen, and I started working at Nishimachi. That year, that school was the polar opposite of Wellington in that it had been established in 1949 and had years of tradition and history. We were not only landlocked in Tokyo, but the library space itself had been copyrighted by the architect who designed it, so physical changes were not possible. Other changes were, though. I joined the Sakura Medal Committee and helped develop the first fully online Readers' Cup committee, or festival, that was attended by students all over the city of Tokyo. I was given a voice at our diversity roundtable discussions, which led to our first ever participation in the Tokyo Pride Parade. My co-librarian, Mari, was in charge of cultural programs, which allowed us to integrate library activities and bilingual story times into the curriculum seamlessly. I developed a student-led class program where students selected a topic, designed a lesson, picked a time slot, and delivered it. And it helps students not only understand what it means to be a teacher, but what it means to be a good student and how to work together for learning. It was a very popular program, and one of the reasons it worked is because Mari and I had created a space in that library that allowed for safe expression of creativity. Nishimachi has a set retirement age, and I was bumping into it, and I was torn about how to handle that. I mean, maybe this ride was over, and it was time for me to go home. And then I got an unexpected text from a friend who was now working at Stanford American School in Singapore. She sent me a text and said, "Are you interested in a secondary librarian position at a school in Singapore?" I said yes. And a few Zooms and emails later, and I found myself coming back to Singapore to work at Stanford American. Now, since I've been here, I've worked very hard to create a warm, inviting library space that welcomes all students. I have a library intern team this year that's learning about librarianship through shelving and creating pin boards and thematic displays. I've been a vocal advocate for collecting books and materials that represent our community and go beyond acceptance and into celebration of diversity. I've also worked to create a broad collection with the highest possible quality of literature, print, and digital resources that not only support learning in the classroom, but support the concepts of intellectual freedom and the freedom to read. The library's become a popular spot during the middle school lunch block, and we're filled with children that are playing games and hanging out with their friends. I collaborated with our literacy coach to develop the Cafe Read Latte program that in its first year generated over 600 reading responses. And I've also collaborated with our school counselors to incorporate the Positivity Project into our annual Book Week celebration. Now, the students love reading to our younger kids at the elementary and ELV, and the kids there love to be read to. And I got invited to speak at a TED Talk, and that's pretty cool. Now, you may be wondering why I've taken you on this journey through my work, my resume, so to speak. And it's because it's my work that has allowed me to unfold and grow. The immersion into new cultures, the sometimes hilarious attempts to communicate with the local language, the difficult navigations to new countries and the assimilations into new schools have all helped me to unfold and grow into who I am right now. My professional life gave respite to my personal life. When I got on that plane to go 9,000 miles further than I'd ever been before, I was just a few months past my divorce being finalized. The house that I lived in, that I thought I would retire in, was in the process of being repossessed. The material accumulation of a 27-year marriage had been put into cardboard boxes, labeled, and put into a storage unit. The district administrator position that I held had gone so far away from the original mission and purpose, I knew something had to change. And then one day I saw an email from a school in Singapore that needed a librarian. And I only hesitated a few minutes before I hit reply. That plane ride was 16 hours long and gave me plenty time to think, what have I done? I mean, really, what was I doing? I wasn't even sure I knew how to rent an apartment or put a deposit down for utilities. I had to borrow against my income from the school in order to make it happen. I was on my own for the first time in over 30 years. And as I lived it all, sometimes with laughter and sometimes with tears, I began to notice something. I began to notice that the healing had begun. The unfolding of who I was before the weariness set in. I found my joy again. I found the broken pieces beginning to fuse back together, and the anger and the grief and the frustration had become calmness and acceptance and patience. And as I unfolded one layer, I would find another neatly folded piece of myself deep inside that was just ready to be unfolded and brought back into the light. And that year in Singapore turned into a move to Thailand, which turned into a move to Japan, which turned into a move back to Singapore, confident, ready, seasoned. And now, here I am, almost 10 years later, after being inspired by someone who was successful in spite of her personal upheavals, to find that I've been successful because of them. See, I don't think the folding and unfolding and refolding ever really stops. And I find myself in awe of my ability to embrace those soft, time-worn, wrinkled pages that I was left with. I have one more reference to that speaker. Because on that day that I heard her speak, she stopped for a moment and looked out and she said, I don't know who, but I imagine there's someone within the sound of my voice that needs to hear that you're going to be okay. That whatever makes you scared or worried and what's coming up next, it gets better. You are enough and you matter. And that day, that person was me. And so here I am. And I believe that what she said that day is probably still true, that there is someone here listening to me that may be worried or scared or wondering how you're going to get through that next thing. And I would say to that person, it does get better. You are stronger than you think you are. You're more powerful than you realize. And you may just be at the start of an unexpected new chapter, a plot twist perhaps, that is just now beginning to unfold. Thank you.